Welcome to the Capital World Language Project Online Foundations Module 7, Application, Extension, and Assessment. This is the last module before you complete your unit. Within Module 7, there are 3 segments. This is the first of them, which is an introduction to application and extension. When you finish Module 7a, you will go on to 7b, Assessment, and then 7c, Rubrics. As you work through the 3 parts of the entire Module 7, you will be able to complete 3 objectives, which we will now look at one by one. For your first objective, you will create one application extension activity for your unit. Notice that you do not need to create 2 activities. Just think about how to extend the lesson with an activity that is not a drill, where the student will have a lot of control. For this objective, think of it like this: go beyond the lesson. You also will be able to describe important elements of assessment. But of course, when you apply those elements effectively, you will know that you truly understand what the elements are and how they fit in. As you write the summative assessment, remember that it relates to your original functional objective, the one you have been thinking about throughout the lesson, and the one that you had in mind in the very beginning. We encourage you to include only action verbs, conditions of the task, and a context that makes sense in terms of what your students are now capable of doing, and that shows they can apply their new linguistic and cultural knowledge and ability. For the purposes of Online Foundations course, the most important aspect of application and extension for us to remember is that they both go beyond the activities that you have designed for guided and independent practice. Just as it sounds, in application, the student is able to apply the knowledge and skills they have learned in the unit within a new context. The difference between independent practice and application is that the teacher relinquishes most or all of the control, such that the student is very much in charge of linguistic and cultural decisions and behaviors. Whether by teacher design as an extension of the lesson, or whether by student choice, or even by chance or fortune, students involve themselves in an experience that may be in or out of the classroom that could require some, none, or all of lessons learned within a unit. In other words, the student relies on whatever he or she knows and can do to participate in one or more linguistic and cultural tasks, regardless of whether or not it is part of a current unit. Higher order thinking that occurs when students apply their knowledge and skill to a task gives rigor to the lesson. The teacher can design activities in which students must make their own decisions and rely on their own skills. At the same time, the teacher will understand that although it may include certain elements of the lesson, it may also allow for very much more, which comes directly from the student's background. In other words, the student will necessarily be trying to make more meaning as he or she communicates. Therefore, the teacher will make allowances for the accuracy of that same communication. The accuracy is very likely to go down as the meaning goes up. The knowledgeable and experienced teacher is aware of this at every moment. Students who are stretching for meaning will make errors in astonishing ways. Extension activities may be closely related to application activities. In the same way that the teacher may create application activities, extension activities allow the student to use the knowledge and skill from the lesson in a new way. They, of course, extend the lesson and allow the student to explore the lesson. Once again, this widens the scope of what the student is doing beyond just the lesson. As we move toward more independence for the student, it can seem scary for the teacher to lose control. But as we reflect, we can see that the arrow of control implies that with this less teacher control and more student control, the student is more engaged and invested in his or her own learning. The arrow also represents feedback. Often, by less teacher investment in the extension and application, teacher activity can shift to observation, reflection, and feedback, not just regarding student progress, but also how the lesson or unit might be improved in the future. Let's face it, we get the point from the illustration on the right of the screen. Homework has a bad reputation with students. It could be that students have been on a treadmill of repetitious and meaningless homework. One of the pitfalls in traditional thinking about extension activities is that many have considered homework equivalent to extension. However, homework is often rote and a rehashing of what was done in class. Although homework may be an extension, it may actually be practiced on any place along the continuum, from guided to independent, from mechanical to meaningful to communicative. The challenge for the teacher, who has the benefit of working within the effective instructional sequence, is that, as in all of our decisions, we need to make conscious decisions not only about what we may assign for homework, but also when and why. If we notice our students need to practice drills, we might ask them to practice at home, but we understand it is not an extension activity. Knowing our students' needs is the key to the pedagogical decisions we make in assigning activities. Does the student need more rote practice that can be done at home? Or is the student ready to apply what he knows to extend the activity? When we decide that we have assigned all the rote and drill that needs to be done, and move away from that mechanical component as quickly as possible while honoring the student's needs, we know the difference between rote homework and homework or classwork that has elements of extension or application. This is a very good example of why teachers engage in lesson design and have a lesson plan, because lesson activities give us information about where the student is so that we can adapt our plan, perhaps spending more or less time than we originally assumed would be needed. Teachers can create application and extension activities for their students, but often the unanticipated experiences that the student has outside of and apart from the classroom are, in a sense, the true application and extension that excite and motivate students to expand and continue their language and cultural studies. When students find themselves helping customers at their part-time jobs or enjoying local fairs and festivals, or perhaps traveling on their own with family or with a teacher-led group, these are often the experiences that really make language and culture come alive for them. After all, as teachers, our goal is to encourage our students to become self-directed participants in the language and cultures that they study. This is also where world language can naturally intersect with technology and other disciplines, such as health, art, business, science, and many other areas of interest. One of the hallmarks of an extension or application activity is that they can often be used as a summative assessment. A caveat, however, is that a very open-ended student product could very well not include specific unit elements, since students may draw from other knowledge or skills while leaving out the elements the teacher traditionally wants to see, because at that point, the student is interested in making meaning, so accuracy goes down as well. The student will use whatever tools are available in his repertoire, whether or not that includes recently acquired ones. These activities, whether used for assessment or not, tend to be standards-based in that they require the student to have an acquired knowledge base which is used to accomplish a linguistic and cultural task. So, for assessments, we can use application and extension ideas, but we must be careful in designing rubrics that the student can refer to throughout the unit. And this aspect will be discussed further in Module 7C. So, let's look at the elements one more time before moving on to assessment. Application and extension activities go beyond the lesson. They can be in or out of the classroom. Application and extension are related in that they are far removed from the original mechanical guided practice from early in the lesson and may be used for assessment. Application and extension involve higher order thinking, which creates rigor. Also, as students make meaning in these open-ended activities, their accuracy tends to go down because their focus is now on ideas. The teacher relinquishes much of the control of student output, and the students therefore become more empowered. So, in backward lesson design and the effective instructional sequence, we go back to our original essential question and objectives to see why application and extension activities are so crucial in language learning. Don't we all want our students to be able to communicate well in the language, culturally and linguistically? Because these activities do encourage students to go beyond the lesson, go beyond the book, go beyond what they thought they could do, go beyond the practice. The students are, at this point, beginning to take charge of their own learning. Application and extension activities bring our students closer and closer to autonomy and being able to use the language out there in the big, wide world. This is the end of presentation 7A. Please complete the activities listed under 7A before you continue to 7B, assessment.